The Bitcoin halving is coming in less than 24 hours, and it looks like people are buying Bitcoin up in anticipation towards the news a little bit. Right? Bitcoin was sitting below 60K a couple hours ago, and now we're sitting at 64.5K already. So it is getting pretty volatile out there. If you look at this wick went all the way down. It doesn't look like much more, right? But this wick went all the way down to 59,600 and the high was $65,000. And it's early at the day right here. Anything could happen. But like I said, it is getting very volatile. Now, what can we expect after the halving? What can we expect for Bitcoin and this other bar? That's the altcoin market. So let's take a look, let's compare, and let's see what we can expect right now, because this is not an event that we see every day, every week, month, year, but every 4 years, and it is now time. So welcome. It's quite legendary out there. So we're going to have some fun times right here. So please like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the bell notification on. Let's get right into it. So if we do take a look at Bitcoin and we put up the halvings, right, these horizontal lines, I want to make one thing very clear. People, they have a very hard time predicting what's going to happen in the market. And that's because it's very hard predicting what's going to happen in the market, right? We can go up, down, sideways, whatever. And we have a lot of indicators that we can use. We can use the very technical indicators like the stochastic RSI or the Fibonacci retracement tool, and that will all help. We could take a look at things like the macro, the S&P, what is it doing, the potential rate cuts that are coming, why these are coming, all these things. But all these things make us overcomplicate this quite a lot. If we just simply take a look at what happens after every halving so far, then we get a pretty clear image of the market. We had the halving in 2012. We went up after that. We had the halving in 2016 and we went up after that. Now we had the halving in 2020, we went up after that. And now we are getting our 2024 halving. So based on more than a decade of history, it is saying we go up. Right now, there are millions of reasons people always used to say, but this time is different. But so far, not a single one of these times was. And therefore, the more you overcomplicate things, the more the chance is that you eventually turn out to be wrong. And it's not overall bad to be wrong, but if you have your money on it, then it is a bad thing. So let's just try not to be wrong and not overcomplicate things, okay? So that's Bitcoin. Now, that's Bitcoin if you zoom out quite a lot. Let's zoom in on these halvings a little bit, because it is not that we have the halving and we go parabolic. It's actually we have the halving, we do a couple of months of nothing, and then we go up in the bull market. This bull market's right here as well. We have the halving, we go sideways for quite a long time, and we finally went up. Then we had the last halving right here, we go sideways for quite a long time, and then we went up. So based on that, I would say like, hey, the day of the halving, we can also zoom in more and look at the days of the halving, and these are usually, pretty volatile. But overall, what I would expect is the price to disappoint again a lot of people, right? Where we just go a little sideways, maybe a little down, mid 50, mid 70, somewhere in that range, right? And then go up. And, maybe April, May, June, like a full quarter, we're going to be pretty boring. And then towards Q3, Q4, we really get that, big parabolic run that usually follows, or usually always follows after the halving. So that's Bitcoin. Why would you care about Bitcoin if we are degens, right? Well, first thing, of course, the Bitcoin dominance is again going up together with Bitcoin. So altcoins are getting nicely wrecked out there still. But at a certain point that will change. But let's talk about an alt season in a different video. I want to dedicate my videos more to one specific topic instead of putting it all over the place. So if we now look at Bitcoin again, but we overlaid this right here, and that's the others, that's the altcoin market, everything in the cryptoverse except the top 10. But everything within the top 125, the rest TradingView doesn't track. If we look at that, what happens? Well, we can see pretty clear that also others didn't do much, right? for a while. Then we had a big spike, came all the way down, and a lot of nothing, basically from May until January next year, somewhere around there. So the altcoin market was going sideways for half a year, right? Although we had a pretty big pump in between, right here. We went from 200 million to 500 million, right? 550. So the altcoin market more than doubled right there. So that's pretty decent, right? But overall, it was pretty boring for a long time, right? Especially when, Bitcoin was also quite boring, right? You can see the altcoin market here pumped more. Bitcoin didn't really pump, but the altcoin market also dumped harder. Now, if we take a look at the halving in 2020, right, and we skipped one because there were no altcoins. If we look at this one, this was quite interesting though, because here in this halving, Bitcoin from April 2020 till around July 2020 was flat, completely flat, nothing happened. The altcoin market went from 17 billion to 28 billion. So the altcoin market gained 50-60%, while Bitcoin did absolutely nothing. Right? So far, this is showing like, hey, the halving is more interesting actually for altcoins. So far, at least. Right? The time before the halving, though, usually altcoins take a pretty decent hit. Right? It doesn't look like much, but altcoins went from 114 million to 72 million. That's a pretty decent correction, 25% correction, give or take. While Bitcoin was not going down really. So altcoins are a lot more volatile than Bitcoin. Now, again, what I expect this halving to do in the short term is absolutely nothing. Right. And of course, Bitcoin can always go up or down or whatever. But that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the halving. It's more maybe a buy the rumor, sell the news kind of event. But the halving doesn't have an immediate effect on the price. That happens over the long term. Less Bitcoin is getting mined. So it takes miners more to produce Bitcoin, and therefore they're selling it for a high price. If we also take a look again, for the people that missed it, at the Bitcoin production cost, this is super interesting because now the production cost for a Bitcoin is sitting at 30K. So it will cost miners 30K to mine a Bitcoin. Once the halving comes, they will get twice as less, right? So it will cost them twice as much to mine a Bitcoin. So it will cost them 60K to mine a Bitcoin, okay? But if Bitcoin is sitting at 50K, then it's not worth it, right? Then people pay 60K to get 50K. Well, that doesn't happen, of course. If you take a look at the production cost of the previous halvings, it always went up, of course. Here it went from 4K to 8K, right? But the price of Bitcoin never went below the production cost, only on week basis, but never went below the production cost. Beautiful, isn't it? So that could suggest that although the halving doesn't really have a short-term price impact, Bitcoin will find a pretty stable floor in around this area, right? It's not a guarantee that it cannot go below 60K. I mean, here it cost 4K, right? And it went below 8K, but the production cost went lower, right? And therefore, Bitcoin had more room to go down as well. So, of course, it could be that it will cost minus 50K at a certain point to mine a Bitcoin. Well, then it's pretty safe to say, though, that Bitcoin will never go below that 50K as long as the production cost is sitting there. Or this time has to be different, right? But if you put your money on this time is different, so far nobody won with that, okay? So it would be very unwise to do that. So the halving, again, it is going to happen today. Well, tomorrow, depending a little bit on when you watch it. But the halving is going to happen right now in a couple of hours. And I think it will cause a lot of people to, follow the news on Bitcoin and to look at that and to build a little hype around it. But other than that, I don't think it's gonna do much in the short term. Now, if we do take a look at the total three, this is also an altcoin chart, but this is everything excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum. So this also includes stables and the high caps, etc. But you can see that we are now at this moment hovering at this support right here, which was, well, needed to be resistance actually, right? We have major support over here and we basically blasted right through right here. And now it looks like to be support for us. Now the altcoin market, the total three, is still sitting around 77% from its highs. Here we also had the halving, and after this halving the altcoin market shot up tremendously, right? So a lot of people might expect that the altcoin market now also goes up that hard, but you must realize we are now 77% away from the previous top. Here we were way further away from that. Here we still needed to do a 6.5x, 540%. The altcoin market was really low right here, right? So price wise, I don't know, it looks more like we are here right now in the altcoin market. Time wise, however, we are here. So we are kind of front running the market by half a year. Therefore, there are a lot of people that say like, hey, could this be a left translated cycle? And although I am in the camp of, hey, we have a 4-year cycle, which is intact until proven otherwise, and you cannot prove it otherwise unless we have to top out, right? So by the time it's already too late, I can finally admit that this time is different. But I'm not a fan of calling that on forehand, of course. But it could be that we are now running half a year early. And that is actually making some sense if you look at Bitcoin and be like, well, you know, this first top was the top, and this was just some kind of a dead cat bounce, and we went down, double top, whatever you want to call it, right? But if you want to call this the top in April 2021, then the cycle moves, you know, to the left with half a year, and then I can imagine that our coming top is going to be somewhere around April 2025 as well, instead of around November 2025, right? People say also like, yeah, no, it will end 2024. I think there's no real reason for that. That's a little too early in my opinion. But it could definitely. But you also have to take a look at this, for example, right? You have to use all metrics and do it for yourself. But if you take a look at the halving, right? Again, we take a look at previous halvings. There we go. And from the halving until the top, how long did it take? Well, here it took a year, 12 months, right? Here it took 19 months. Here it took 18 months, right? And if you want to take the first up, it took 11 months. So anywhere between, well, very average 10 and 20, let's say 15, whatever, right? Let's make it that 15 months. So 15 months from the current halving, that will put us in July 2025. That could be a top, right? If we go with the 11/10 months, then yeah, we're sitting at March, April 2025. If we go with the last 2 cycles, which is in my opinion most comparable, and you really take the top actually, then you're sitting around 18-19 months. Then the top could come in somewhere in, well, November 2025. So whatever might happen in the short term, and whether we see an early top or not, the halving is at least known for bringing the price up, okay? And that's the most important thing. Like I showed at the beginning of the video, basically, we have the halving, we go up, halving up, halving up, halving down. Doesn't make sense to me, right? So overall, can the market crash with, and especially altcoins, with another 40%? Let me put it like this. Easy. Easy, right? I'm not saying it is super likely, but I am saying like, hey, there's no reason why it can't, and it can even happen overnight, right? That could happen, definitely, 100%. Could it also be the fact that it doesn't happen? Yeah, right? So we don't know that. And there is, let me put it very simple. There is nobody in crypto, on YouTube, on Twitter, nobody that knows, okay? So anybody that claims, like, they don't know. We can make our best assumptions. At the end of the day, we have no clue. So what, in my opinion, the best thing is to do is buy every fucking thing you can, right? DCA. Why? Again, does it go up, down? We don't know, right? So of course it can go up. So you buy everything and you go all in right now. That's high risk, of course. Can it go down? Yeah. And is it possible that you say like, well, you know what? I'm going to wait. I'm not going to buy altcoins. I'm not going to buy Bitcoin because it can go down. You can do that. At the same case, it doesn't happen and you miss out, right? We know that so far we always go up after the halving. So dollar costing right now, when there's a very high chance that at the end of the day, at the end of the run at least, right? The prices are way higher. Then there is no losing there, right? No losing. Unless, for some reason, the whole system is broken and we do this, right? Yeah, then you have to be a lot more patient. At the end of the day, crypto will go up. But I don't see why the cycle would end at the halving, right? So far, the closest thing that we were at ending the halving was 12 months. Right, so why all of a sudden would we now do it at 0? Right, that doesn't make any sense. So that's my take on the halving at the moment. I think it's going to be really bullish long term. And again, if we do take a look at the altcoin market right now, here we go. Here we have the halvings. Also, altcoin market does very well after the halving, and usually for the altcoin market, so far we had less time to accumulate, okay? We had less time to accumulate. We had the halving and we basically never went below it, unless this wick right here, right? We had the halving right here and we basically never went below it. So therefore, I am in the camp like, hey, it could go down. Of course, everything is possible, but man, if you don't buy now, then you are risking missing completely out on the fact that this time is going to be different. And that's just like I said, that never worked for nobody. So if you are unsure about the market, because altcoins are getting wrecked against Bitcoin, Ethereum is breaking down against Bitcoin, even the others, right? The others chart against Bitcoin. Where the hell is it anyway? Here we go. Even that is going down right now, right? I do feel like, yeah, but, you know, are you really betting on this? You can do that. But now, having bullish, right? And it's not that crypto is in a hard place right now necessarily. It's the S&P going down as well, right? And, you know, Bitcoin just follows the macro. And if you overlay the halving on the S&P, you can also see this, right? You have the halving, and around the halving, the S&P took a pretty nasty dump of 9%. In crypto, we'd be like, that happens for me every hour. Yeah, in the S&P, that's quite a lot, of course. But around the halving, we had a pretty big dump party right there. Here, around the halving, take it however you want. You can look at it like before the halving, right? Big dump. You can also look at it like after the halving, also quite a dump, right? Then we had this halving right here. We had a massive correction as well. And yeah, this one was due to COVID, but without COVID, we were already crashing as well, right? COVID just made it worse. Now we are at around the halving and the S&P is again correcting, and so far with 5%, right? Could it stop here? Yeah. Could it go way lower? Yeah, definitely possible. So it's not weird if we now dump quite hard, right? That's just what happens, right? The S&P does that every cycle, and Bitcoin follows, right? Bitcoin follows, and then altcoins follow Bitcoin, of course. But altcoins follow, you know, way more than Bitcoin does. I mean, Bitcoin didn't went down with 40%. Altcoins did, right? So overall, I would say this is a beautiful buying opportunity still. I mean, if you do take a look at the bull market support band, one last thing, right? Then you can see that the altcoin market is sitting at the bull market support band. In previous cycles, whenever after or around the halving, when altcoins were sitting at around the bull market support band, it was the buying opportunity. We never went like, look, I mean, we went here, right? When was a better time to buy altcoins than here, right? Or here? we never went below that, right? If we look at the cycle before that as well, we had the halving. We were at the bull market support band. This was such a beautiful last chance that we got. And then we got dragged up by it and we never saw these prices again. Again, are you scared that this time is going to be different? Then be a little more conservative. But my expectations are super bullish on the market, man. So I want to leave it here. Thanks for watching. In the next video, by the way, I will do the results of the giveaway in one of the last videos that I did. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the bell notification on. See you guys tomorrow.